Welcome back to Breaking Spines, the miscellaneous book review show for reviewing miscellaneous books. So we had a poll last time as to what kind of book I should talk about next. The choices were Western, Harlequin romance, and poetry, and it was a tight race, with Western beating Harlequin romance by just 2 votes. I was excited, but as I browsed my local thrift stores for something acceptable for this program, I came to discover that the vast majority of pulp paperback westerns consists of long-running series that stretch into hundreds of installments. You have the 430 plus books of the Long Arm series, 400 books for the Trailsman, 400 for Gunsmith, and 400 for Slocum. I guess there's a huge market for long-running Western stories that ignore the passage of time and refuse to age up their characters. I don't know. This stuff was almost all I could find in my local bookstore run, and I'm such an anal butthead that I couldn't bring myself to grab any. I can't start with book number 271 when I haven't read the 270 books before it. What if I miss some important backstory? I got so desperate that I ended up grabbing the very first Western-looking novel I could find that wasn't part of a series, without so much as sampling it to see if it would make good Breaking Spines material. What I wound up with was The McLaffertys by Jude Williams. Published in 1986 by Signet Books, this stale piece of toast tells the story of Michael McLafferty, a retired mountain man who's brought back into the life of adventure with the California Gold Rush. However, he quickly crosses paths with an old antagonist of his, the Frenchman Jean Larroqueux. Larroqueux crosses paths with some old friends of McLafferty's, the Cheyenne warrior White Bull and his wife, the half-white, half-native woman Moon Morningstar. In a drunken rage, Larroqueux kills White Bull, and McLafferty and Morningstar team up to track him across the western frontier and put him down for good. So, first off, while this is not part of a larger Western series, I can confirm that this is a standalone novel. It certainly wants to be part of a larger series. Characters have pretty expansive backstories, but the details of these backstories are kept ridiculously vague, like they were the bare minimum reminders of past entries in a book series. We learn that McLafferty had gotten married to a woman of higher standing, which leads into a kind of midlife crisis he seems to be acting out in this book. But the book doesn't really bother exploring that idea. We don't even learn his ex-wife's name. It's like, oh, you know who I'm talking about, right? That woman from past books? Yeah. Everybody knows everybody, either in person or by reputation, which removes the burden of having to develop relationships. All of that is set up by page 1. I wonder if maybe this book was some kind of audition tape, like Jude Williams wrote this up and brought it over to whoever's in charge of Long Arm and was all, "Hey guys, I wrote a book like yours, can I join the club?" This lack of detail runs through the rest of the book. We have these characters crossing these vast landscapes, still barely explored, new to them, and we're told about it with all the passion and care of a bored husband showing off 5-year-old vacation slides to his in-laws. And then they crossed Coyote Pass, turned left at Hanging Rock, and spent the rest of the day walking along the river, where they camped and ate jerky. I've had personal navigational systems with more passion than this book. This book doesn't have any lavish prose, there's not a metaphor or simile to be seen, not even a "her eyes were as blue as the sky" or "the horizon stretched out forever" or something. When one of the characters had a dream, I almost went into shock. Holy crap, symbolic meaning! It's not really deep, it's just Morningstar dreaming about how much she wants to kill Larroqueux, but it's something. The only bit of flavor Williams adds to the story is the one kind I personally can't stand, and that's writing out a character's accent. One of the main characters is a wily prospector type called Fiddlehead, because of course that's his name, and he talks with the "Gip Flabbit Shimmy talk." I don't even know what that accent is officially called, but this guy joins McLafferty on the road pretty early on and is a constant presence throughout the book, and it gets old really quick. The problem is that the accent is so thick that anytime Fiddlehead says anything, you have to stop and try and translate. I mean, I don't mind a little inflection here and there, but I really would advise any writers watching this to not be intentionally misspelling words to try and recreate an accent. You think you're writing a conversation, but instead you're making a puzzle to be solved. At the very least, if the reader can't understand what a character is saying, the other characters shouldn't be able to either. It very much feels like someone's first effort, trademark. There are certain creative decisions that feel obvious to someone like myself, but seem to slip Williams by. A really basic example. At one point, our heroes come across a family traveling the Oregon Trail, and their wagon has broken down. Philhead improvises some repairs to get them back on the road. Later in the book, they come across a destroyed wagon, and they wonder if the family might have crossed paths with Larrique. There's no bodies to be found, and the wagon is completely looted. Now, you probably would have recognized the setup here, that Fiddlehead would have looked for signs of his repairs to identify the wagon, but that never happens. Now that may seem small, and it is, but it's very indicative of the book's lack of form. There's no setup to anything, there's no Chekhov's guns, there's, hey, we have to get the bad guy, then stuff happens, and then they get the bad guy. Now, not every story needs to be built the same, but they still need to be built in the first place, and the McLaffertys is a book unconstructed. The characters are all white hats and black hats. The good guys are righteous and better than everybody else, and the bad guys are cartoonishly evil. Larrique and his men leave a trail of destruction that would make modern terrorist organizations get a little weak in the knees. There ain't nothing that crosses his path that doesn't get raped, killed, and destroyed. Reasons? Who needs reasons? I'm a Wild West bad guy who just wants to see the world burn. Of course, that's a reoccurring theme among Westerns, the kinds of people a lawless society attracts. You got those trying to tame the land, bring law to it, and you have those who take advantage of that lawlessness. Westerns do tend to lean more to clearly defined good guys and bad guys, yes, but you can take it too far. The only people here besides white hats and black hats are, Mormons. Just right in the middle of the book, our heroes wander into Salt Lake City, look around, go, these guys are weird, and then they get into a standoff with Brigham Young that almost ends in bloodshed, and then they go their own way. It's the nearest thing this book gets to a creative idea, looking at this Mormon community and expressing, well, how it doesn't really fit in with the classic iconography of the Western. You could really sink your teeth into that if you had the mind to, which, of course, they don't. And this moment passes by like all the rest, quickly and without contributing much. So is there anything nice to say about this book? Well, I really liked Moon Morning Star, at least in concept if not in execution. She has the most character stuff going for her. She's of mixed race, she's now a single mother, she wants revenge for the murder of her husband, she's uncertain of her future, she might be falling in love with McLafferty. This is really her book. McLafferty is a boring load. This really should have been her journey, her quest for justice. Multiple times in the book, characters go, oh, revenge is not for women, it's a man's job, or something to that effect, and since the book is named after its male protagonist, I was kind of worried Morningstar wouldn't be allowed to participate in the final confrontation. Kudos where kudos is due, she's totally an active participant in getting revenge on her husband's death. She's an equal in that regard. Again, there are parts in this book that feels like a pitch to make it into another one of those super long running series, and in that regard, putting this dumb hunk meat guy as the lead character feels like a concession to reading demographics instead of what's actually interesting. A 400-plus book series about a kick-ass, half-white, half-Native American single mother surviving the California gold rush? Yeah, I could get on board with that. So would I recommend The McLaffertys? Well, it's a quick read. It's 300 pages, but that's more due to font size than the actual amount of content presented. It's not good, but it's not entertainingly bad either. It's just really, really bland. It feels like a first draft of a book from a brand new writer who watched a lot of television westerns, and all the editor did was check spelling and grammar. I don't think the form of this story was tinkered with in any way. And that's too bad. It's a perfectly serviceable plot. This exact same story with these exact same characters could have really worked under a different author. Honestly, this is probably one of the worst books I've covered. Not because it was incompetently written, but because it was stale and boring when it didn't have to be. When there's no reason it should have been. And for that reason, no, I cannot recommend it. I do feel a little disappointed that the results of our first poll proved to be so uninteresting. So I promise I'll return to the Western genre in the future, and I might even put aside my hang-ups and pick up a book that's number 187 in its series. But where to go next? October is of course the spookiest month, so let's take on some monsters. What would you like to see me cover on Breaking Spines in October? A werewolf book? A mummy book? Or a ghost book? I thought about throwing in vampire books as an option, but we already did one of those, and this show is all about covering new ground. So put your vote in the comments. Thank you for watching, and keep on breaking spines.